When I was 25, my dad died. He was 2 weeks away from being 50. But I looked just like him, and he died on a mountain bike ride. He died not sitting on the couch, eating potato chips and binging on whatever. He was a very, very healthy guy. That blew me apart. I had no explanation. I had no answers. How did he die? Heart attack? Why? Like, what? This doesn't make sense. He died of what they call a widowmaker. But that really set me back probably for years. Mourning his death, so sudden. So how did that impact me? Well, I actually wrote my dad's obituary. Have you guys ever written an obituary before? It's tough. That was really heavy. So I wanted to, show the world who my dad was and do it right. I started to think, what in the world would people say about me? Like, am I this influential? Am I this impactful upon people? And there was like 1,500 people at his funeral, standing room only. Would I have this kind of impact? And it hit hard.
Welcome back to the Present Fathers Podcast. Our guest is Dr. Travis Parry. I had the privilege of being his guest on his show just recently. Really inspiring conversation, and this is going to be a real treat for you listeners. Dr. Parry is a very talented individual. He's done a lot of great things, and I'm going to turn it over to him to fully introduce himself. But first and foremost, he's a husband and father, and he's passionate about helping other men improve their lives as well. So, Dr. Parry, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks, Brandon and George, for having me. Yeah, quick intro. I was son of an entrepreneur, which... I saw my mom and dad, they had a great marriage. We had a big family. And probably the thing that stuck with me the most is that they would only really argue about one thing, and that was money. And I saw money be, kind of a thing that was a struggle. It was up and down. So I thought, money's never going to be an issue for me in my life. I am going to study money from every direction I can. I read books. I went to seminars. I was this, teenage kid that had like a planner and was trying to figure everything out and set goals and whatnot. And finally, that landed me as a financial advisor at the age of 21. I took some tests and started getting training and went through college, becoming a financial advisor and eventually a financial planner. Along that way, I started meeting with really young couples and some, mid-30s, whatever, that were entrepreneurs, kind of gravitated into, helping those who I thought probably were like my parents, who doing well, but just struggled to really connect about money. And I soon figured out I didn't know what I was talking about. I would do all sorts of financial stuff. Oh, come on. I was a young dad. We had 2 kids. I graduated college. I was like, all right, I think I know what I'm talking about when it comes to money. But when I started seeing marriage problems and psychological issues, I'm like, this is over my head. What do we do? So I started the path back to academia and really dove into psychology really deep, did a master's, and then went on to get a PhD in marriage and family to really fine tune my understanding about marriage and money. And there's so much overlap with what I did that I said, you know what, I'm no longer just going to be a financial advisor. I'm going to be very holistic, kind of a whole person, lack of a better word, a life coach. Nobody wants to say, oh, I'm a life coach, because it's some of the connotation. So I said, who can I best help here? I knew it was entrepreneurial men. I knew it was dads. As I was trying to figure this out, I really went through some of my own major changes and struggles, and felt that, it's because I'm struggling with a lot of these things. I really do connect with a lot of men who are not figuring out their own balance and their own time management and relationship with their wife. We're told all these things in society, yet it just doesn't match up. And so I did a lot of work, and my wife and I kind of tested out my model. And in this model, it was really to involve the spouse, in what I call couple development. Personal development is great, but to involve your wife, to help set and achieve goals long term, is really just kind of the next step. Is the 2.0. And I tested that at a PhD level and did my dissertation on it. And what do you know? Couples that have the same shared values actually are happier psychologically. They are more stable in their marriage, and they have better financial ability to achieve their goals. So I knew I was onto something. So I started writing a couple books. I wrote the first book, Achieving Balance, which has been out since 2020. Wrote that during the pandemic. We hit bestseller in 3 different countries in several different categories. And then this one most recently, thank you. Most recently we did this one, Marry and Grow Rich. This is kind of the sequel. The first one's all about balance, about how, dads, business owners are struggling with all their time, which coincidentally is a big issue according to women. If they don't see their men, they're going to maybe have problems in their marriage, right? So this is a big issue here. And then money, time and money. Those are the 2 biggest things I think anyone quarrels about, fights about, especially in marriage. How can we get on the same page? And specifically for those dads out there, these books are designed for dads, entrepreneurial dads, and dads in general. So I've enjoyed that. I speak. I have a podcast that, George was on, and we'll get that out here very soon. It's called The Balanced Growth Show. So you can have balance and you can have growth in your life and in your business and in your marriage.
Outstanding. And so you talked about kind of really digging into deeper how not just knowing about money was enough, but really kind of this psychology around it. And we were talking backstage about how that is, and you just mentioned again, one of the biggest causes of divorce, or one of the factors that leads to, a spouse wanting divorce. So what has maybe been the biggest surprise or most important thing you've uncovered through your work in this field as it relates to how we think about money and how we approach money as a marriage to ensure that we're successful as opposed to falling apart?
Yeah, I think there's a ton of money myths and a ton of myths about balance. What's interesting is that we tend not to think about balance as a financial issue. But men, especially, who are wanting to be providers, right? They want to provide, they want to protect their family, they want to nurture their family. That it really is an innate thing. And I do believe that men have this ability. Like we see all the time, like how men are so quick to react when a baby's falling off of a slide or going to bonk their head or do, like, the reflex is incredible, right? But it's that same providing and protecting response that we have to be like, okay, I now have a family. And a man truly is not a man, I believe, until he has a family. It's like a dormant man. It's like a man waiting to really have full potential, but his brain literally changes when that first baby cries. Like, there is a vasopressin that's released from the brain, at least a signal from the brain to the hormones. They release vasopressin, and that's the connecting hormone in men that changes a man. Makes him go, I will do everything within my power to protect that little thing, and I will do whatever it takes. So sometimes men, we jump in like, I'm a dad, I'm going to protect, and I'm going to provide, and that can turn into, I'm really stressed because I can't control, interest rates, the rising inflation, political instability, problems in the world, potential war, like all these things we're hearing about. Well, I need to work more, right? And because if I work more, I'm providing more, monetarily speaking. But what we tend not to look at the link as is, well, if they start to lose balance, if they start to become workaholics and fall into what I call the workaholic trap, because nobody wakes up in the morning like, I want to be a workaholic today. But we do wear it as a badge of honor. Like, I work hard. Like, I think we want that as men. But we don't have to work 90 hours. We don't have to be killing it, per se, to be really successful. And unfortunately, there's a lot of bad examples of that who are very successful in their business. Very successful. But if you dig into their family life, there's not much to be proud of. So men may have to make a decision,
Yeah, and I see that, there's a lot of balance just in my experience with like entrepreneurs, they kind of make their own schedule, but like for your blue collar, white collar, they're very set schedules. Um, what would be like your top advice for them to create that balance that you're talking about here, without being overworked or workaholic, and kind of having some priority towards the family life, right? What would be
Yeah.
first steps there?
Well, first know that if they are really out of balance, there's no such thing as work-life balance. That's a myth. It's not work-life balance as an equilibrium, but it is working on the things that are most important in your life. I'm very clear with my first book, Achieving Balance. We talk about that. So what are the most important things? I think it's really important to go, okay, where are my priorities? We always hear, get your priorities in order, right? But have you ever done that exercise? So in my book, I actually say, this is how I do it. I believe there's 10 areas of life, and this is how you can prioritize them. I have a little game that you play, and essentially you're looking for what are the top 3 or 4. And most of the time, most dads that I interview and meet with, they're going to say when they go through this game, it's their spiritual health. It's their relationship with God. Typically, 9 times out of 10, that's number 1. The next one is typically their physical health. Okay, so are they taking care of themselves? And usually 3rd and 4th is spouse and family. Okay, so if you're not making the time, whatever your schedule is, if you have a flexible schedule, awesome. Maybe you do that during the middle of the day and you take your kids on walks, or you do daddy dates, which I highly recommend, right? You spend some time with them. If you've got to work in the evening, maybe, because your schedule is flexible. But what the trap that a lot of entrepreneurs face is because they're, flexible schedule, is they get into the habit of just working all the time. But somebody that clocks in and clocks out, I think they still need to be, cognizant of, I still need to make time, not just come home and unwind for 2 or 3 hours watching TV to justify, I work hard, so I'm going to play hard, but I'm not going to play with my family. I'm not going to talk to God, and I'm not going to work out. I'm going to have a dad bod, right? Those things, but honestly, those are the 2 or 3 things that just, for anyone, no matter what job they're in, they're going to find they feel out of balance when that's not being, paid attention to.
Right. And, for me, one way that I found personally that helped me ensure that I not just set my priorities correct, but actually followed through on them to actually nurture them correctly, was to think long term, right? When I actually started to consider what is the legacy I really want to leave, right? And it's a living legacy because you got to do it in motion, right, to actually get to that end goal. But when I shifted my perspective to look long term and then evaluate, are the things I'm doing today actually building towards that end state? So some, things like video games or football or whatever, right? Some of these things aren't necessarily bad in and of themselves, right? You're not drinking yourself silly or something. But if you're spending a whole Saturday watching football instead of the time you could have gone out with your children, is it really that important, man? So that I bring that one up because I'm a huge Oregon Ducks fan. I went there at the alma mater. That was something that had to die, man. I don't need to watch every minute of every game, right? If it's that big of a game, I'll find some time in the schedule earlier in the week to make time for it. But, every man has to kind of wrestle with these things because there's all things we want, right? So what would be some additional things that you've discovered along the way that maybe is a combination of that long-term thinking, going through this game with your priorities that kind of puts the rubber to the road for guys?
Yeah. So I actually do an exercise where we look at where we spend our time. So think about it. If you want to get healthy, what do? Well, you pull up an app that tracks what you eat, right? Or how much you exercise. I've got Strava, and I look at when I hike, when I bike, when I'm working out, and it tells me, yeah, you're doing great or not so great, and I love that because I can see, did I just set a PR on my new mountain bike ride, or am I doing well for my goals? Okay, that makes sense. We might track what we take in, like, oh man, my macros, I need more carbs and whatever. Like, is that helpful to your physical health? But when's the last time you actually tracked your time? When's the last time you sat down and said, how much time am I spending at work? How much time am I spending with my spouse alone, without the kiddos, without the TVs on, without the screens, on the couch, vegging out at night, pretending we're actually together, but we're not. We're just scrolling social media side by side. What I think when people have that experience, when they actually go through, I have this exercise in the book where we find where are we spending our time and create what we call an ideal calendar. From there, we can say, this is how much time I want to be spending in my top prioritized areas. And that starts to make the shift. When guys can go, gee, this is how much time I'm spending at work. Can I be more productive? If I'm a business owner, can I take time off? Or if you can't and you're clocking in and out, what about my energy, right? Can I come home with good energy so that I'm ready to be there with my kids? Am I showing up to be there with my kids like I am for my best client or my employer, right? Does that make sense? Because if not, we're starting to then lose the reason why we are providing for our families. We start to lose that. Like, well, that's the whole purpose, so we can have time with them, so that we can do these fun things. And man, if you're not dating your wives, again, that's one of the highest priorities. You have to make that a priority, and you need to lead out. Don't ask her to plan it all the time, and don't just be like, where do you want to go to eat? Take her out. That's why she loved you and married you in the first place, because you're the leader of the home, and you should be taking those reins and responsibility. So I think as we look at that, like, your own physical health, your own spirituality, your relationships, your close relationship with your wife and kids, how much time are you actually spending? Track it and see where you need to make those changes. And again, in my first book, Achieving Balance, I talk about this. I call it the make time method. We look at, where are you actually spending your time at work? Can you be more productive with it? And if so, then we can cut it out. Most entrepreneurs, they're working 72 hours on average, according to Forbes. 72 on average.
Crazy.
I've worked with people who are over 100 hours a week. But typically on average, it's 75 to 80-ish for an entrepreneur. Again, you might be a W-2 checking in and out, but then you are commuting. You've got energy issues. Maybe you come home late at night because you start with a later shift. Like, there's all these things. Like, how can we make work a part of our life instead of all of our life and all of our focus and all of our identity? You're a dad, right? And part of being a dad is providing for that family, not the other way around.
I look at, so I also write about balance, and it's kind of been one of the key factors that I've always been very intentional on in my life. And I look at it with like 4 legs or 4 pillars. And when one of them is off, like your physical health, everything else suffers. A lot of cases, regardless of what's suffering, one or the other could be fine, or you could still be strong in it. But it's like, if your spiritual health is sick, the rest of it gets sick. If you're physical or you're emotional, any of those things, everything else gets sick. It's a detriment to all. And so I love that you specify that you have to be healthy in all factors. Put the finger on the pulse, right? Figure out where your time's going. I call it being time healthy and time wealthy. You got to be healthy with your time, and you got to be wealthy with it. So that means either you're going to have to buy it back if you're a self-made entrepreneur who does really well. Start delegating some stuff off, buying some of that time back. But for me personally, like, my physical health is something that I've struggled with in the past, and it is a detriment to everything. And so for me, I always try to make sure that I'm constantly reevaluating. And, you had mentioned like dating your wife. So there's this great little trick that I use, and I think you guys will love this. I will rate what I want to go do. So like, I'll say, honey, I would really like to go to dinner tonight. She's like, well, I'd really like to stay in tonight. And it's like, okay, well, I'm at about a 70 on that. She says, well, I'm on about a 30. So let's just go out and eat, right? And we meet in the middle, right? It's like, she can see that it's really important to me, and we're using our time wisely because we're still checking each other like, okay, who wants this the most? And we prioritize it. And some nights, if it's special, I'll do it for her anyways. But, it's something good that you can add to it.
I love that. And I'll add to that too, is we've done this in the past. Sometimes it works. I'll plan one week. She'll plan the next week. I'll plan one week, and you just take some turns. And then in my book, Marry Get Rich, I talk about this. Like, there really are 4 or 5 different kinds of dates. Because sometimes, even if we go out, we tend to do the same things over and over. Like when you go to a restaurant, you know what you're going to order every time. Because when you think about that restaurant, you're thinking, okay, what is it that I like there? Oh, yes, I want the lomo saltado. Yeah, let's go. Or I want this dish or whatever. I want that very, awesome, really rich dessert. And so as you're thinking about that, like that's what you want to do. But we kind of do that on dates. Like, oh yeah, this is what I get comfortable with. We kind of get in a rut. And so I suggest go do something free. Go do something that doesn't cost money. And because that's probably what you did when you were first dating, right? In college or high school or whatever, like you didn't have a whole lot of money. So you're going on bike rides or hikes or walks or fishing or something. And then go do something traditional once in a while, dinner and a movie, that's fine. And then maybe do something that's a little bit adventurous. Do something that might cost a little bit money to go to or go see. And then maybe once in a while you really splurge and do something that's just, it does cost a little bit to kind of save up to. But I don't think dating has to be that complicated. Mix it up. And one other one I would mention is do some service. We're big in our faith of doing service, and so we'll serve. We're going to go serve this night tonight together, and I know that brings us closer together, even though we might not be talking. We might not actually be working together, but the fact that we feel good about it, we're giving back. It's huge in marriage. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Brandon.
I love that last one about service. When my wife and I do an act, either caring for someone who's got a lot going on or something of that nature, it's not the most romantic of settings or whatever, right? But there is something very powerful between you and your intimacy, right? The emotional connection and everything that happens between a husband and wife when you are giving to others in that way with your time or energy in those factors. It's amazing how much that actually does bring you together, so that the next time you do have the more romantic situation or whatever, you're that much more locked in already. It's a very powerful experience. So I love that you brought that one up, because I can definitely second that recommendation. I wanted to go back a little bit to where we were talking earlier about money and kind of the mindset of it, and especially the psychology. And you brought something up there about when you audit your time and avoid being a workaholic. Well, what do you want? I have found this to be an interesting question that most men really struggle to answer. They're almost afraid to say what they want because they're conditioned to think that that's arrogance, right? As if they have any desires or objectives, that inherently means selfishness. And I see this a lot with dads too. It's like dad guilt, right? If I take any time for me, it means I'm robbing the whole family. There's multiple layers to this, but I would love for you to maybe dismantle some of these myths and these ideas, especially with money, about that want is not necessarily selfishness, and identifying how to keep those things healthy. But if you can't even ask for what you want or state to yourself what you want, there's no way you're going to get to that objective, right? So I would love for you to expand upon that idea.
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting. I did some coaching this morning with a couple. They run a business together. It's doing $7 million a year. They can have whatever they want. They're doing fantastic for themselves, right? But he still struggles with finding time for his health. And she still struggles with feeling connected to him at certain emotional levels. It's an interesting quandary, because I think sometimes we think, well, if I make enough money, that somehow these things are going to fix themselves. I'll just throw money at it. It's just not true. It's just not true. If you want, if you want to have great health now, do it. And in fact, like Brandon was saying, it will affect how well you show up at work. You're going to have more energy. You're going to be more ready for the day. Like, it's just how this works. Same thing with spiritual study. So, I don't know if I'm answering your question, George, but I think that if we think that, gee, I should be putting myself last, I think we get it wrong. Especially because we have different areas of our life. We need to look at where our priorities are. And then I believe we set what we call an ideal calendar. I bring it all up in the book, Achieving Balance. Where are your 10 areas? How many hours can you spend in each of these areas? We have 168 hours a week, 7 days a week. That will never change. It's just not going to. And so we get to decide where we spend the time in those hours. Okay. What are we going to do in that week? And if we're going to be reactive to everybody else's needs and never consider our own, then eventually we get burnt out. It happens at work. And I saw it in kids in sports when I was 15. A kid that was amazing at soccer was like, yeah, I'm done. I'm like, what do you mean you're done? Like, you're going to play with me in high school. Like, you're not supposed to do this. He's like, yeah, I'm tired of it. I'm like, why? He spent way too much time doing it. He got burnt out. He didn't see the balance in his life. And I think it happens to kids in sports, but then it happens to us in work. We're like, this is boring. I don't like it, or unfulfilling. We might not be doing the right thing, but we also just may be really pushing ourselves so hard that we don't feel fulfilled anymore. So what is it you love to do? I'll ask guys all the time, what's your hobby? What's that? Like, okay, yeah, we kind of default with golf, but a lot of times golf is like also a work thing, right? No, what is it you really like to do? For me, it's mountain biking and it's snowboarding in the winter. So I live by the mountains. I live in northern Utah. I got mountains everywhere. I get to decide between, 15 minutes of where I want to drive after this show. Where am I going to go riding, right? Or early morning, what trail do I get to explore? That's fantastic for me, and I'm really blessed. But I have to make that a priority, and my family knows Dad loves riding. Awesome. We're going to support him. They show up to my races. They're excited for me when I go. And guess what? My wife knows when I go on my rides, I come back a happier Travis. I come back a better dude. So any spouse that is loving and supportive of each other, they will look for ways to support. My wife loves music. We've turned our downstairs basement into a choir area, into a dance studio, and she has her choir and she leads that. And then I support her in the choir that she sings in, and I take care of the kiddos on Monday afternoon. Notice I didn't say babysit. There are kids, right? So I support her in the things that she loves to do, and she supports me. That's what I call couple development. You want to grow together. You want to support each other. It's not just, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And, the idea of if all we do is just serve her to help her, I agree. We need to do that. But then there's also that support that should be coming back, and respect from the kids. They know that, hey, Dad loves to do this. Otherwise, what enjoyment do we have alone and personal? So I think that's important. But there's also the flip side of that. The pendulum can swing too far. If I got some snowboard and snowmobile buddies down the street, and if that's all we do, and we neglect work or we neglect our family, there's that balance again. Like, are we taking care of the things that also matter? So we've got to really understand our priorities and make sure that we aren't upsetting this balance of our priorities and making sure they're in order and making sure that everything else is taken care of. But to really understand that we need that time alone, and maybe with other guys too. I could do guys bike trips. I do camping trips with my sons alone. Like, hey, we're going to go and do these things because we're guys and this is what we want to do. As well as the family, as well as my wife and I, we go away 2 or 3, 4 times a year because that is sacred time to us. So I think you can have it all. You just can't do it all at the same time. You have to prioritize it.
Yep. And then there's always, wisdom applying to what season of life are we in. Some things can go on the back burner, and of course, but you said it very well, right? You come back as a better spouse. And that's where, for any guy listening to this who maybe feels that dad guilt of, oh, well, if I'm not constantly serving my family, I'm robbing them or, stealing some opportunity from them. There is a lot to be said about taking a little bit of you time to do something that is energizing, refreshing for you, something that you just naturally enjoy, because you will come back and you can pour from a full cup, right? I cannot stress that enough, how important it is to do that. But you also gave a good word of caution in moderation, right? We can't just constantly go do all the things we want to do all the time. That's not realistic. And you also alluded to this idea, which I assume is probably heavily in the book, Marry and Grow Rich, this idea that really marriage should be a relationship of how can we both give each other the maximum, right? How can we both support each other and increase both of our outputs and both of our fulfillments? And it's not this competition, which we see so often in society today, is framed as, oh, well, if the man gets his, that means she's losing hers, right? And it's this huge like battle of the sexes. So I don't know if you have any kind of wisdom there or thoughts on it, but I see this as a massive issue where so many men have almost been brainwashed that they diminish themselves to an extent to where then they get bitter, they get resentful, they get stressed, they get angry, and then they're taking it out on her, and then the cycle begins, right? And I don't know where to start breaking that, and I assume you address this in the book, but I'd love your thoughts on this because this is also a massive issue that I see.
So, in the psychological world, we care a lot about the individual, the mental health, right? But you don't cut off the head and say, let's study the brain. That doesn't make sense, right? Just like when it comes to marriage, a lot of people think, well, in marriage, there's two parties. Really? Is there? Or did we just unite? The scriptures are pretty clear. If you're not one, you're not mine. I don't think God was just talking about the church and unity in the church. I think he was talking about that when a man marries a woman, he leaves father and mother and they become one. So how do we become one? Let's stop talking about like what's his and hers and it's all in between. It's a very selfish mindset, very self-centered, and very much our society today. So we've got the pop psychology, which we'll see on the Facebook posts and the reels on Instagram, and so much bad and horrible advice is given on social media. I don't even know where to start. I thought about one time just doing an entire show every day of just taking the worst advice I've seen on social media and trying to like make sense of it and tell people, no, don't do this, don't do this. And I thought that would be a really horrible job. And I know some people take it up on the political spectrums and stuff, but they're doing it a lot of times for views. And maybe, I mean, that could be an entire career. I've just resisted it because it just takes so much of my time. There's too much content.
And then you're just filling yourself
Good
with
grief.
negativity too.
That's it. Yeah. So, and maybe there's a way to do that you can say, hey, let's look at this and reframe it, possible. But I will tell you, the research shows us over time. There's a study that I brought up in my dissertation. So I'm not going to bore you. I'll be really simple. The short and long is because of our society, we're actually expecting more and more of marriage over time. So the past decades, like from the 50s till now, last 75 plus years, okay, we've become a society of if I get married or when I get married, everything is just going to solve itself. Like all my problems will go away and all these things will come my way. Ultimate happiness and da-da-da-da-da. When in reality, people are giving less to marriage. They're giving less to their spouse. So what are we doing? We're creating a totally false sense of our future because we're expecting that when we get married, all these things will figure themselves out. And in reality, nobody's really willing to give anymore. What I love about the gospel, and I can be, a little bit preachy here, is God is very clear. You're not greater or less than the other. There is no behind or in front. God made man and woman from the side. That means they're equal. And because of that, they become what he calls a helpmeet or partner or teammate. You don't refer to each other, you guys are business partners. You don't refer to each other as one is higher or lower. There's no echelon here. There's no ladder. You're teammates, right? And marriage is the same. You're teammates, which means that it's okay to be masculine. It's okay to be feminine. It's okay to be a dad that works and provides and protects, and a mom that protects at home and raises the children and does these things that are separate, that are distinctly separate, but just as important. You can be different and equal. We don't have to be same and equal. And that's a falsity of society, that we have to somehow both be working, and therefore we throw our kids at daycare all day. We never see them. And I'm saying this for like two income, earning families. What we know about the research is that when kids have their parents at home, at least one parent at home, it's called attachment theory, that they're going to do so much better in life. They'll do better in the relationships. They'll do better in everything. So moms are just as important. Dads are not more important than moms. Moms are not more important than dads. It's different. And kids connect with mom different. They connect with dad different. But when it comes down to it, if we're not giving 100% and 100%, marriage will eventually fall apart. Families will suffer. If we come into it going, I'm giving 50, if you give 50, it's failed from the beginning. And quite honestly, I think it's less than that now. It's like, well, I'm going to give 25 and you give 25 and we'll see what ends up shaking out, because they expect so much from it. And the one way to really look at this is how much money goes into, I just picked up this magazine from my financial advisor's office. I was leaving and I picked it up. And it was this bridal magazine, because he's a part of this community, and he's in it. I'm sure he's advertising it, and just looking at it, and I was just thinking and remembering a statistic. In college, most people will never take a marriage preparation course. Yet that probably only costs $50 to $100. Okay, my wife and I took marriage prep as a class at college together. It was awesome. We talked about so many things that really helped our marriage. But most couples don't do this. But what will they spend money on? They spend tens of thousands of dollars on venue, dress, bridesmaids, grooms, food, party, alcohol. I could go on and on and on and on. Why? Because we're expecting that somehow the wedding will start us off in the right direction. But how many of those weddings end up again in divorce? A very large percentage. Yet they won't spend a few dollars more on preparing for the marriage, speaking to their pastor, going to a therapist, do some marriage preparation that will allow them, even talking to your parents, what's the best practice? What can I do? How can I, or read a book or do something that will get you prepared for probably the most important decision in your life.
That's exactly what I was about to ask, is how important is your for a young teenager that's looking to be married eventually, how important is it in the factor of like what who he's picking in a spouse? Like how does that scale compared to other decisions in life? Because society says to be not monogamous, to be outside of marriage, to chase women, to be working till you're super wealthy and you have all the power
get married,
that you want.
maybe. Yeah.
And it's like, but it's the opposite. But at the same time, you have to be very careful who you select, because the rest of your life is literally affected by that one human being, especially 100%. If you have children, right? Like it cascades as the responsibilities stack. And so it's all the more important. But, your book talks about if you find that person and you get married, that you're truly rich. So tell me in your own words, what makes a man truly rich?
I really appreciate this question. And I'm going to fall back to a quote that I saw when I ended up in my I guess we would call this account advisor. There we go. Advisor's office. I just had a brain fart there. Like who am I talking to? Talking to my my counselor, trying to figure out my major in college. There we go. And on the wall, and I have this picture, I've saved this picture. On the wall, there's a poster. You can look it up. It's 21 Suggestions for Success by H. Jackson Brown Jr. 21 Suggestions for Success by H. Jackson Brown Jr. Number 1, marry the right person. This one decision will determine 90% of your happiness or misery. That has stuck with me, as I was making decisions on who I'd marry, and quite honestly, who's going to throw their hat in the ring with me, right? Because it goes just as much for them as it is for me. And, I don't have all the right answers, but now I have 3 young adult children. Okay, one's 22, one's 21, and I have one who just turned 18. And, they're making decisions. Life college, girlfriends, boyfriends, marriage, all these things. And, one of the best things we can think about is, and to answer this question about what makes a person rich, we can look at wealth. We can look at financial wealth and we can say, yeah, that's what we typically think as being rich. And that's what I imply in the book. Like, yes, this is about money. However, is the play on that word of like what really is wealth? Most people at the end of their life, no matter how much financial wealth they've accumulated, they can't take anything to the next life. Like it doesn't come with us. The Bible is very clear on that. Okay? Nothing goes with us. Our experiences do, and our relationships can. So at the end of our life, and you've seen people write about this and talk about it, it's interesting, on their deathbeds, most people regret a couple of things. They regret working too much and not spending enough time with people that they love. Relationships, relationships, relationships. So what is true wealth? Lasting true wealth really is your own relationships. I do believe there's a caveat to this, because sometimes we want to make it either or, right? I think there's an and here. The and is you can also have a legacy on your family with your wealth. A business partner I have, John Nebeker, has written a book called The Family Bank. He talks about this concept that we can help wealth transfer, not just to have money, but to be able to allow the next generation to have a step up in life without being entitled, spoiled brats. Okay? This is huge, because anybody can transfer wealth. You can get a financial advisor, an estate planner together, an attorney, whatever, and they'll write stuff, and an accountant, and draft some things, and they can get money to the next generation. But we see story after story after story where this completely ruins them. Make sense?
Yeah,
so I think you
transfer.
can. Yeah. Yep. I think you can have, again, I'm a big believer, like, I can have a twofer or a threefer. Like, I think you can have this all, but you have to do things in order. And so, back to one of your previous comments, like, we're living in a society where we're so self-focused. We think we have to have 1 million subscribers or followers on Instagram. We have to have, a couple of homes, and, we've got to be able to know how we're going to retire before we settle down, quote unquote. I think that's bizarre. Well, I just posted this today on LinkedIn and on Facebook. It was one of the sharks on Shark Tank. And I forget his name. Gosh darn it. I'll have to look at this up as I'm talking. But he mentioned, like, the best thing you can do is marry young. Why? He said on financial reasons. I don't agree with everything that he says, but he's like, because you can grow together with your wealth. You can learn from each other. You can learn in the good times and the bad times. But my book, Marry and Grow Rich, is not marry the rich. I had some women who, like, they gave me some flack for this book. Like, wait a minute, are you trying to teach people, like, just marry and be that kind of, gold digger? I'm like, no. It's marry and grow together. Like, marry and grow rich together. Right. Because you create together. What a different experience.
Wonderful, by the way.
Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate you doing the research on that really fast. Thank you, Mr. Wonderful. I don't agree with all he says. Of course, we're different personalities. You can't. But I really loved that about what he was saying. So that's really kind of the idea is, yes, it's about money. It's about growing together, though, in your relationship too, because that relational wealth will continue. And I believe that we can be married and united as families forever. And I think God wants that for us. He wants these relationships. And I believe that after this life, my wife is going to be able to say, I still want to be with you.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to say, I still want to be with you too.
Right. And I think that one of the most important factors there that you had kind of touched on slightly was the fact that you have to transfer the wisdom that accumulated the wealth to the next generation so that it remains a wealth and it's not, becoming a deficit or bankruptcy, right? Because it's really easy to make money. It's really hard to keep it in a lot of cases. Like you can see that in many books of experience, like Morgan Housel talks about in The Psychology of Money. Most people that are mega wealthy are either mega wealthy for a very long time or very short bouts, because they can either keep it or they can't keep it. And it's like, or they can't earn it, but they've kept it. And so like there's these little balances there that are kind of nuanced, and it's interesting to see. But yeah, I think you have to transfer that wisdom. It's so important that whatever created the wealth, you teach your kids that, because that's going to be something that will help them create it themselves or maintain what they get from you.
100%.
Well, that's a perfect segue. Let's shift a little bit more fatherhood focused type questions here. And so just given that conversation we just had, and Dr. Parry's experience and wisdom, having raised 3 adult children here, what do you think is one of those most important lessons that fathers absolutely have to be drilling home, whether it's about money or something else, that sets them up for that kind of growth mindset, that abundance mindset in adulthood?
Well said. Well asked. So we homeschool our kids, and I'm not saying every dad has to do this. It's something that we've chosen to do. And because of that, I think I get more time with them. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do that. I wanted to be able to take them places. I want to be able to travel with them. This year I don't want to list off all of our vacations and travel, but I do believe that travel is an investment because it's time together. Okay, we turn off the phones, we go in a van, we go across country, or we fly them to, California and enjoy choir together, or we take a trip to Scandinavia, which we are going in a couple of weeks. I'm taking my older Scandinavia and showing them where their family history's from on both sides of our family. It's going to be awesome. Now, I'm not saying travel is everything, not at all, but it's the time together. And as I talk about this difference with them, I've actually done several classes for our homeschool community. It's one thing for dad to sit down and say, this is what I teach everybody every day. And my kids would be like, oh, that's just dad, But when I've brought their friends in, the homeschool community friends, and I've taught them some of these ideals, I will start with abundance versus scarcity. And it's interesting because as a financial planner, this has come full circle for me. I used to actually sell a lot of financial products using scarcity model. Hey, this is how much you make. This is how much you can save for the rest of your life. You better hurry. You might mess up. You might not have enough time. And is that true? Yeah, sometimes that can be true. Sometimes. And that is an issue for a lot of people. But it's very scarcity focused and it's very fear driven. So I've really tried to help my kids start with what they think about money. What's their relationship with money? How do they talk about money? How do they use that money? And really get right with what their relationship is. I recommend the same thing for every couple. What is your relationship with money? How do you view it? Is it evil? Is it a tool? Do you believe in scarcity? Are you more of an abundance mindset person? And I have a whole bunch of tests and quizzes for couples in the book to see how different they are and try to align where they are on the same page. Now that's important. I think it's really important to grow up in a abundance mentality. Also to know that in America, if you have one pair of shoes, 2 pairs of shoes, you're actually rich compared to the rest of the world. I think we need to start there. We are the most blessed country on the planet, period. End of story, exclamation point. I can't be more adamant about this. And we've done all sorts of little experiments where we divide up the class, and we had one group come in and they had a 3-course meal and fine dining. Everything was cooked really nice. The second group was having pizza or something microwaved or whatever. And then the third group, they were on the floor, no utensils, eating beans and rice, and randomly placed. And it was kind of funny because my kids ended up being in the poor group, and just having these conversations about rich, middle class, lower class, whatever, that we're placed in different areas, but we can we can grow our wealth, and we can know that God has given us all things. There is no limit. So I love teaching that. That's super important. But really, at the end of the day, I told this to my daughter who's making decisions about college and boyfriends and marriage and, future and whatever. And I'm like, you know what, really, at the end of the day, all that stuff's important. But the most important thing as a dad that I can teach you is how to follow God. If I don't teach you that, and I don't show you as an example that I'm trying to follow God, none of these things will really matter. Because I can teach you about money concepts, but then you'll be selfish. You won't give back to the poor. You won't give God thanks. And you'll end up feeling just unfulfilled, and you'll always want more, right? I can teach you about great relationships and how to be on the same page with each other, but if you don't involve God in that process, you can't ever do it alone. You're going to fight. You're going to quarrel.
Right.
There's going to be arguments. And quite honestly, you might just say, this is enough. I've had it. But if you make a covenant with God to provide for each other and protect each other and love each other, man, that's a promise with God you don't want to break. So for me personally, you're asking me as a dude, like that, the most important thing I can do. So that it kind of comes back to the balance thing too. Like if my kids don't see me reading, if they don't hear me talking to them about the gospel, if I'm not reading scriptures with them every morning and teaching them about who God is, who is?
Right.
Who is?
Yeah. Well said. That is absolutely the most important thing. There's no question about it. And it just something struck me. A dear friend of mine says this frequently, and he kind of taught me this principle. But he said, money is water. It's essentially just a transfer of energy, right? So when we start to view money as just a simple tool of an exchange of energy and value between groups of people, you lose that, sense of avarice or greed that can twist the heart about it, right? And it's more of a, as I have it, and if I'm wise with it and generous with it where I can be and things like that, it's not about the money anymore. It's about these more fulfilling aspects of life that we need as human beings, right? And then, to your point, if we have that good heart posture, if we do have more, right, it's not controlling us now. It's not our master. It's a thing that we can bless others with to a higher degree. The way he framed that money is water, kind of flowing like a river, to me was a new way of thinking about it. I hadn't really thought of before, but I've, as an entrepreneur now, like working with partners and things like that, I've seen this play out a lot, and it's amazing how much more good is actually generated by, not this obsession of making more, but how can we actually create value here, and then we'll both benefit out of this, and then we can pay it forward and so on and so forth. So just wanted to add that little end cap there.
Yeah.
Brandon has the next question for you, but thank you for that wonderful input, because I think this is something a lot of dads are wrestling with, and I think you knocked it out of the park.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I think for me, this question that I'm going to ask is mostly because I've got kids that are entering the double digits. You've been through the know-it-all phase. You've been through the teenage years, the hormones, the young adulthood, going into the kind of the freedom of a driver's license in college and all these things. So through that journey, you've left this legacy of podcasting and books and all these knowledges that your kids can look back on and reflect on. But, through that journey physically, what's something that you'd emphasize to your kids more as they became young adults in that phase? Looking back, like hindsight 2020 kind of deal.
Oh, I didn't talk about this at all. When I was 25, my dad died. He was 2 weeks away from being 50. So that was my almost exact half-life. And I talk to my wife about this all the time. She's like, that's not your half-life. You're going to live really long and healthy. I'm like, quite honestly, I look just like my dad. I know you get 50% of genetics from your mom and percent from your dad, and I understand that concept. But I look just like him, and he died on a mountain bike ride. He died not sitting on the couch, eating potato chips and binging on whatever, and he didn't have a beer belly. He never touched alcohol. Like, he was a very, very healthy guy. That blew me apart. I had no explanation. I had no answers. We waited around for, answers on wait, just how did he die? Heart attack? Why? Like what? This doesn't make sense. And as we dug into it, we found that Dad actually had he died of what they call a widowmaker, meaning he had one of his arteries that went to his heart that was 90% clogged. 90%. The others were pretty normal, around 15, 20% ish. Okay. So I went out and I got my heart checked. I got my arteries checked and was doing just fine. But that really set me back probably for years. Mourning his death, so sudden. I don't want to get into all the details of that day, but it was a nightmare, absolute nightmare. And I even had to call some of my siblings and tell them, call his mom and tell him, like, it was, what a crazy, crazy day. So how did that impact me? Well, I actually wrote my dad's obituary. Have you guys ever written an obituary before? It's tough.
I've done an exercise where I've written my own.
Okay, that's what I was getting to.
And that's rough. It's definitely something that will make you think about your mortality quite a
literally,
bit.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote my dad's obituary, and nobody wanted to do it. Like, you get to do it. I'm not the best writer in the world. Yes, I've written a couple of books, but I had a lot of help. And so I wrote his obituary up and put it in the newspaper and got some input, and that was really heavy because I wanted to, show the world who my dad was and do it right. But then it's that experience, Brandon, like you had when you did it for yourself. I started to think, what in the world would people say about me? Like, am I this influential? Am I this impactful upon people? And there was like 1,500 people at his funeral, standing room only, clear to the back of the church. The stage was taken. It was crazy. He's a pillar in the community, just a great, great guy. And I was like, man, would I have this kind of impact? And it hit hard. So when I got home, I did just that. I wrote my own obituary. I've heard about this exercise before. But what I did is I focused on what I value. What are the characteristics that God would say about me? Not even what I think about me, okay? Not what my wife thinks about me, although it matters. But I got really clear with God. I'm like, God, what do you think about me as a father, as a spiritual relationship with you, as my physical health, relationship with my wife, with my kids, with my friends, with the community, all fun and rec, career, finances, all the areas. And I really wanted to know. And he told me. And I wrote them all down. And I talk about this exercise because I know there's, the obituary exercise, and I think Covey was big into that, right? I have this exercise in Achieving Balance, and you go through and you really circle what is it that describes you. So not what you value, but what God values about you. And it becomes more like a motto for your life. So my brother at the end of my dad's funeral stands up, and he spoke before me and a couple of my other brothers, and he got up and said, you know what? My dad loved scouting. Boy Scouts was big on his heart. And he became a Life Scout, didn't ever get to Eagle, but he made sure that all 5 of his boys had Eagle Scout. So he said, a scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. And he gave a talk about each of those points. I was like, dude, I don't know what to say after that. That was the best talk ever. But it also really lined up with me. Like, would people think that I'm trustworthy? Do they think that I'm, helpful and friendly? But more importantly, what if nobody showed up to my funeral? What if nobody was there? I know I'm still going to meet my maker. And I want to be what God wants me to become. I don't want to check off goals. I don't want to just delete tasks all day. I want to make a difference, and I want to become someone that reaches his fullest potential. But I'm not going to do that alone. And so as I look back in my life, I think the first 25 years of my life, honestly, Brandon, to answer that question, I feel like a lot of times I was checking off boxes. I was really trying to hit goals because that's what I was taught. But it hit home so personally when my dad died. I'm like, my dad did all these things. And not only that, it wasn't just an accomplishment. It was he became this person. And that's what really mattered. I'm like, I want to be that person. Maybe I die tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow I get hit by a Big Mac truck on the highway. I hope not. I want to live a long time. I want to enjoy life. But if I do, have I really become who God wants me to become? And that's what's really stuck. I think that's what I probably regret earlier is I've actually watched some family videos. It's really important to take family videos. I watched myself coming home from work one day. My wife was like videoing me and I was like complacent with my little kid. And I wasn't very happy. I was really stressed out. And I was like, dang, that is not the guy. I'm not that guy anymore. I'm happy. I love coming home. And even if I'm not, I'll take a moment, meditate, take some deep breaths and go, I'm going to come out and I'm going to be happy to my kids because they deserve a dad who shows up every day and loves them. It might be their last day. And if it is, I hope they know that I was a good dad for them because they deserve it. I think every child needs a good dad who turns off the phone, shuts off the TV, plays ball with them instead of watching the NFL all the days, right, George? Instead of, on their social media account all day long, they can make memories with their kids that are worth keeping and worth watching for them someday. Be memorable with your own family. It took my dad passing away for me to really get it here. Really get it. I will tell you, though, it wasn't because I was neglectful. It wasn't because I was being a bad dad. It was because I was trying to do everything for everyone all the time, right. All at the same time. When I finally got real with it and got real with where are my priorities, it just freed me up. And I've been a better dad since then.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing and for your candor, because I think this is how we actually learn from each other is being real like that. So really appreciate you being raw with us. And sorry that your dad passed when you were so young, but I'm really grateful that you're able to articulate this in a way now to hopefully wake other guys up, to wake up to that. We typically ask a slightly different final question, but just given this, I want to take a little bit of a curveball here. And what is your favorite memory with your dad?
Oh,
given
I appreciate
that.
that.
From you so soon.
Yeah. So it's funny you ask because I think our family, we had this vacation. See, in my opinion, summer vacation should never end before Labor Day. Summer, like it's quite honestly, if we look at the calendar, the summer, the equinox doesn't end till like September 21st. Okay.
Right.
So I honestly think kids get robbed. They should have more time to play. It like ends up being
Agreed.
2 months. I'm like, wait, what? And then we cent our whole lives around it. Anyway, that's a whole thing that I've gotten. It's probably why
be our next episode together.
But one of the things we did is over Labor Day weekend, we'd go up to Mammoth Mountain in Central California, and we'd ride mountain bikes, and we'd fish, and we'd hike, and we'd camp. And it's one of my favorite memories with him. My dad was a man of God, so I've had a lot of spiritual experiences with him. But just to be able to spend time with him, he loved mountain biking, and so did I. So it's something we had together. He also was a pilot. And I talk about this in my book, Achieving Balance. I actually thought I was going to be a pilot. I told everybody at 18, I'm like, I'm going to be a pilot. I told them for a couple of years, I'm going to be a pilot. I served a mission for my church for 2 years, and I told everybody on my mission. They're like, what do you want to be? And like, you had to have a canned response because otherwise it was just like, I don't know. Like, I don't really know. But so I told them, I'm going to be a pilot. When I got back off my mission, I started interviewing people. And my dad's like, yeah, I think you'd be a great pilot, but why don't you interview some of these people who are pilots? And I interviewed a couple of them, and one guy's like, hey, I know you like flying, but did you like riding in a bus, on your mission a lot? I'm like, no, I hated public transportation. And he's like, well, sorry to break it to you, but it's not like Top Gun. It's more like flying a bus. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I still like flying. I still like being in the clouds. And then he's like, do you like being away from your family a lot? I was like, it's like for the first 5 or 10 years, you really don't see your family. It's like, dang it. I thought this was my ticket. I thought this was my thing. But it really hit home that like, no, this was not something I'm supposed to do. I want that balance. I want to be home like my dad's home every night and be at my ball games and coach my soccer teams and be involved in church and be there. I wanted to be like my dad like that. And he eventually told me, he's like, Trav, I actually wanted to be a pilot growing up too. But I instead decided I'm going to be a business person, and then I'm going to pay for my own plane. And when I'm ready and I've got more time and freedom, I'm going to fly. And he did. Before he died, he bought his own plane and he started flying. And one of the last memories I had with him is flying up through Park City area on a plane together that he purchased, that he flew up from California to meet me when I was going to school at BYU. And we're just flying around and having a great time. It's like someday I wanted my dad to teach me how to fly. And, that's one of those memories that I have with him, just doing things, spending time. I worked with him too. I worked in his family business, and I learned a lot about how to treat people right, how to be respectful, how to do business honestly without screwing people over. He was a plumber, and he got into like gated communities with codes that he knew by heart, and he knew where the key was. He knew how to get into places that I was like, this is gorgeous. This is a mansion. And he's like, yep, and I would go into places like that all the time because people trusted him. He was honest. So I learned a lot from him about working hard, about being a good dad, being great to my mom, being a good, man of God, and on and on. But, when I think of my dad, it's the time he spent with me. And quite honestly, your kids aren't going to remember how much money you make. They're not going to care. Even if you go on vacations, how elaborate the vacation is. They're not going to remember a lot of the things that you think are as important. It's so funny because we'll go on trips. I'm like, hey, what was your funnest part? And they'll remember like the weirdest, littlest, tiny thing, like feeding a squirrel on the side of the road, or like seeing the windmills or something random. Like, but we paid for like this thing. Like it didn't matter as much. Kids, they just remember how they felt by spending that time. And there's that difference between quantity time and quality time. And I know people get into that. You have to make quantity time to make quality time actually happen. You can't cop out and say, yeah, I'm just going to do quality time once in a while. You can't. It doesn't just show up by itself. You have to spend the time to make those moments happen. So he did a really great job of that, and I want to keep that legacy alive.
That's so beautiful, man. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, what a great example to follow. Love that. All right, so why don't you let everyone know where they can pick up your books, where they can follow your podcast, where they can engage with you, because I know you've got a lot of things in the works and obviously a wealth of wisdom to share. So where can they find you?
I give you one website, balanceddads.com. If you go to balanceddads.com, there's all my books, there's my podcast, there's a little bit into my coaching if you're interested. There's all the stuff on that one site. We try to keep that updated pretty well. But yeah, I have the Balanced Growth Show. I talk about business owners that are struggling with balance, trying to grow it, trying to stay, on the same page financially with their spouses, and some experts like George and others who have been on there. And then I've got my book, Achieving Balance, which is really the part one, like how do you get this balance? How do you get your time back? And then really that second book, Marry and Grow Rich, it's all about how to get your marriage back. How do you get that on track? And the two of you on the same page financially so you can really grow rich together. And one day I'll have my book number 3 on there, which will be about creating family legacy. So this has been a great conversation to have that really teased that off. And we'll tease that out there. I'll probably begin working on that this fall.
Outstanding. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your candor again, sharing just honestly and open. I think this is how men will grow and benefit tremendously. So thank you for your generosity there. And dads, you heard it here. There's a lot to cover, a lot to take to heart. So get to it. Let's get climbing that mountain of fatherhood. We'll see you in the next episode.